And we are beginning to go here. You should be here. This is Gary Schnitkey. We're here for an impact of updated yield and price information on ARC PLC decisions. So that is what we're doing here today. And if I can move this forward, there we go. Our handouts for our webinar that we will be using are in our control panel, so you can download those there. All our slides that we'll be using today are on there. This webinar will be archived and available on FarmDoc, and you can submit questions during the webinar. Don't raise your hand, just submit the written questions. We don't do anything with raised hands. We don't even know what that is on the webinar. So don't do that. Just type your questions in. We also want to thank our sponsors, Illinois Corn, Country Financial, and the Illinois Farm Bureau. So they've made this webinar possible, so we're going to keep going forward. We would point to our tools. Again, our Farm Bill Gardener Program Payment Calculator. We would not suggest you go there right now because it's down for maintenance as they update the yields. But they will be up there shortly. And our Farm Bill What If tool, I would suggest using that particularly if you have an ARC IC payment. You can download that spreadsheet and look at ARC IC both for a single farm and a multiple farm case. And if you have prevent plant or some low yields, ARC IC can make payments this year.
I was just going to highlight that we're getting the new yield, the updated NASS yield estimates into that Gardener online calculator. So we think within a couple days at most, that should be up and ready to go again, right?
We think maybe even today, but let's say Wednesday. Wednesday.
Give till Wednesday to be back up and running with that.
Will those be NASS yields only or your adjustment factor?
So those will include adjusted yields that we used. If you want to see what those adjusted yields are, go to our post, last Friday's post, and you can see what those are, and those will be input into our payment calculator. All right. Just a reminder, March 15th is the date we're shooting at, and actually it's March 16th, and you're going to be making a ARC PLC choice for the 2019 and 2020 years. Only 2019 and 2020 years, and that's where we're going to spend most of our time today. We're going to talk about that choice and as well as SCO, because if you choose PLC, you'll be eligible for SCO. And if you're taking RP, I would strongly consider taking SCO. If I took PLC, ARC County, it's not eligible. So those are some of the dates, and we're going to spend most of our time on this ARC PLC choice because this is the number one choice you got to make by March 15th. And actually, you got till the 16th this year because March 15th is on a Sunday. Every day year after this, you will be able to change your enrollment decision for each year. So unlike last year or last time around, you will be able to change the decisions. What makes this year unique is that we know a lot about the 2019 year. So you can pretty dial in somewhat closely what those incomes and revenues will look like for 2019 from ARC PLC. All right. As of last a couple weeks, we've gotten some new information, and February WASDE released their report. They're suggesting a $3.85 price for the market year average for 2019. That's above the reference price of $3.70, and at this point in time, you would be saying that PLC likely will. You put a very high probability on that the PLC will not make a payment for 2019, but there's probably a pretty good chance, 50-50 chance of it making a payment in 2020.
So we're about halfway through the marketing year, so that's narrowing the options of how much that can move based on what we've sold already.
And you would say now, if given that we're looking at a $3.85 price, 1 in 10 years it could get below $3.70, and it would have to be something really, really remarkably bad to have that happen for 2019.
We'll make no guesses of what that bad thing is.
Yeah, there's a number of bad things.
There's some things out there.
There are some things out there. Soybeans, $8.75 was what they released at. That's down from $9 in January. One thing to note is this price goes down, ARC County tends to make bigger payments because the benchmark price for 2019 on ARC County is $9.63. So as this price comes down, ARC County makes higher payments. Our reference price for soybeans is $8.40. It's very unlikely that our soybean price will get down to $8.40 for 2019. So that's why we've said lean to ARC County for soybeans, and then wheat $4.55, and we're well below the $5.50 effective reference price. PLC will make payments for wheat in 2019, and it looks like it will make payments for 2020. All right. We also had yield information released from NASS on February 20th. You see those yields for corn over here. This is the NASS yield release. I suppose the more remarkable thing is the number of counties where we don't have yields. We have quite a few counties where we don't have yields, but for those counties that we have yields, you see those listed there. You can see that particularly in the center part of the state, some of those are pretty high, 206 throughout this area right here, and that's even given the late planting that we had. Given those higher yields there, we would not expect ARC County to make a payment. We used these yields and adjusted them. Going back here, FSA will not use these yields in calculating ARC County payments, but we can use these to estimate what FSA will make payments at, and we adjusted those yields used to project 2019 ARC County payments. So we used these yields, we adjusted them by an average adjustment factor, and I would still say there's uncertainty about the projections. In particular, if you're looking at irrigated corn, there's a lot more variability in estimates around irrigated corn. ARC County will make a payment when county revenue is below 86% of a benchmark yield, benchmark revenue, which is benchmark yield times benchmark price. Again, we are not eligible for SCO. Will you adjust the yields based off planted acres? So here's what we did when we adjusted the yields. We took NASS yields from 2013 to 2017 and saw what FSA reported for their benchmark yields. So what happened, and then we calculated an average adjustment. So we did not make an adjustment factor for prevented planted acres, which may be an issue this year because this year we're probably going to have some more prevent plant acres in some areas of the state, and in particular failed acres, and that may be more of an issue in southern Illinois than elsewhere, and we're looking into that issue as we speak, and we'll let you know. But right now, the yields that we calculated, we just took the 2013 to 2017 FSA yields, which is based on RMA data, compared it to NASS yields, and then see where that ends up. So both ARC County and PLC make payments on base acres in corn, which will not change. So here's the ARC County payment. And let me just give you an example for Henry County. For 2019, if we have a $3.85 price for market year average price, we lowered the yield for ARC County here in this slide to $1.77, and that triggers a $3 payment. Just to give you a feel for when ARC County will trigger a payment. PLC at a $3.85 price will not trigger a payment. There you see the benchmark price, the benchmark yields for Henry County. So here's the guarantee, here's the county yield. So we did this for every county in Illinois for which NASS reported yields. If NASS did not report yields, we did not estimate a payment for ARC County at this point in time. All right, if you do that, here are the counties where we see for ARC County payments for 2019. So Grundy County has a $34 payment on all our non-irrigated. Iroquois County 13 to 21, Lake 5, Mason 8 on irrigated, Union 9, Wabash on 15. So what we're seeing, if you look at it, there's that Grundy, Iroquois County, sort of along the border, northern central Illinois, where we had worse yields than others. And those areas look like ARC County will make a payment because their yields are lower. We had a question, should I take the Grundy County $34 payment or wait till next year? And that's a good question. My guess, go ahead. Jonathan, did you have anything?
Oh, I mean, this is what makes it interesting, is it gets to be more of a tighter decision, right? You get 34 potential for 19, but if we're looking at a lower price in 2020, that could really push up PLC payments. And so you're kind of balancing almost the potential of 34 completely yield driven, right? We're not going to see that. You're not going to see an ARC County payment at a 370 price next year. So that yield driven side of it's the change. We're talking about 2 counties that might have enough even to think about it. Yep.
So if you're in Grundy County or Iroquois County, you probably have a tough decision to make. Other parts of the state, it will be more difficult. If you want to see our yield estimates, there's a downloadable Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. It is tied to last Friday's, which is February 21st, FarmdocDaily. All right, that's corn. So we don't see many counties playing for corn, ARC County in 2019. What about soybeans? Here, and here, by the way, are the break-even yields below which, if we see county yields below this, we will see payments. And as we've already mentioned, we see only a couple payments, mainly in that northeastern Illinois border area. Here are the yields that are reported for soybeans across the state. These are all non-irrigated soybeans for yields. These are reported by NASS. FSA will use RMA data, not NASS yields, and we adjusted yields used to project the 2019 ARC County payment. So we took these NASS yields, adjusted them, and by the way, for non-irrigated all series, we found that 85% of the observations were within 2.5 bushels of the NASS yield. There's still some uncertainty about these projections that we're going to show next as far as ARC County payments, but we're probably narrowing in more on those soybean payments. Again, what you're looking at soybeans, you're looking at have here at $9 a market year average price, 57 bushels, and then we get an ARC County payment here of $4 at this 57 bushel yield. All right, here, and we're using $8.75 market year average price, which is what WASDE released for this coming year, so that's down. And here on the left side of the screen, you're seeing what is projected for ARC County payments for all or non-irrigated soybean payments. Again, this is 2019. And this is all non-irrigated and irrigated. As you can see here, there are some counties with some pretty large payments, and if you see a county in here that's grayed out, that's because there is no yield estimate for those counties, and we did not estimate those. If you're in one of those counties, looking at a county next to it may provide some indication, but we haven't made a estimate here. These green counties, there are estimates made for, but they're zero. So you can see here we have some pretty large payments here. Henry, Knox, this area of the state, we have some some larger payments all along the eastern border here. Our highest payment actually is Champaign County, $56 per base acre. If you're in Champaign County, I guess I would take ARC County. So it would take a lot for that to knock down to zero this year. Then if you go into southern Illinois, you again see some pretty large payments down here. Again, these are estimated using the NASS adjusted yields, but this will give you a feel for where we're at here as far as payments for those counties.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we're getting a few questions on yields. So maybe make a few points. So again, the maps you see on your screen right now, there's obviously the counties that have a dollar amount label. That's the payment estimate. That's based on the yield that was reported by NASS, adjusted with a Gary adjustment, if you will. Not to put the blame on Gary for that adjustment, but that is not an adjustment that is endorsed by or going to be used by FSA. Again, the yield data that we have is from NASS. That's not what FSA will use. But looking at the years where we have both the FSA yields and the NASS yields, the adjustment factor was based on that history. The counties that do not have a label, there's kind of a light gray. That means there is no NASS yield, right, Gary? So we don't have a payment estimate. And then the light green counties, if you can see the contrast there in the counties that aren't labeled, the light green ones had yield data, but they just don't have an ARC County payment. So the estimate is $0 on that.
So we did have another question from Grundy County. We're going back a little bit. So we're estimating, this is corn, we're estimating a $34 payment for Grundy County. And what yield are we using for that? What we did again is calculated so we took the NASS yield in Grundy County. We had an adjustment. The adjustment, as they say, is a Gary adjustment. But what it is the average difference between the NASS yield and RMA yields from 2013 to 2017. So what we did, FSA reported RMA yields from 2013 to 2017, and that's used in the benchmark calculations. So we took those yields, compared them to NASS, and for most county, and I'm sorry, I don't know what it is for Grundy County. Actually, if you go to our spreadsheet, you can see what it is, but it was usually 1 to 2 bushels. Those RMA yields were typically about 1 to 2 bushels higher for corn than for than what the NASS yields would be. So that is how this estimate is coming about. I will tell you right now that these irrigated yields, there's a lot wider variation in what NASS reported and what the irrigated yields turn out to be. And again, if you think about where I'm just going to show you soybeans. And now I went the wrong way. I'm sorry. Here's the counties with soybean irrigated yields. In most of these counties, there's very little irrigated yields, so there's going to be much more wider variation in what the RMA reported FSA used yields is compared to NASS. So if you're looking and you have irrigated practices and looking at our estimates, you got to take those with a grain of salt because they are based on a limited number of acres, and you can see a lot of variability across those. Are the estimates in the spreadsheet for all base acres, or will the prevent plant payment rate apply to 80% of base acres in the total payment? We do the adjustment within the spreadsheet. So when we do those, when we report acres, it's adjusted for that factor already.
And for ARC County and PLC, that's 85% of the base acres for the crop on the farm, FSA farm.
Again, here are the counties where we have over a $20 estimate, and if you're in or near those, you probably want to lean towards ARC County for soybeans. And Grundy County, good luck with your decision on the corn one there. You can take what is estimated to be a $30 payment this year, but let me just give you an example. Let's say we have a $3.30 market year average price next year, which is a possibility. It's come close to that in past years. That's a 40-cent payment rate. If you have even a per 100 bushel yield, base yield, that's $40. 40 times 0.85 will put you at roughly $30 per acre. So it's a tougher decision. All right. So just another note here on soybeans, it's very sensitive to yields. 1 bushel change will change the ARC County payment by about $7.40 per acre. That's the projected price times 0.85, and lower 2019 market year average prices will increase payments until we reach that maximum level, and vice versa to that, higher prices will reduce those payments. And again, why we're seeing ARC County make payments this year is because of that relatively high benchmark price compared to where prices are at now, are now available. All right, so our suggestions: lean towards PLC unless you're in a county with large 2019 ARC County payments. In Grundy County, have fun making your decision. I could see you doing either one of those. Soybeans, lean to ARC County, particularly if you're in a county with a large payment. Again, Champaign County, I don't think you'll get a bigger than $56 payment next year on PLC. And wheat, lean towards PLC. All right. We're going to, again, the decision that you're going to make on a per farm basis is price loss coverage or ARC County. Again, this is the March 15th decision, so you can just switch between PLC and ARC County across crops, across farms, and if you choose ARC IC, you will be enrolling each one of those farms in ARC IC. And again, you can vary the decisions by FSA farm. And by March 15th, you're going to be making this choice for 2019 and 2020, and then yearly decisions after that. Just one other note, your base acres are not going to change. And it's PLC and ARC County will pay on base acres, not planted acres, base acres. So here's the PLC payment, effective reference price minus the higher of the market year average price or the loan rate times the PLC yield. Again, PLC yield, you can update those this time around. For 2019, it is the yield that you have. You can update those yields, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. It's a relatively straightforward decision. Show them the yields from 2013 to 2017, and FSA will calculate which one's the higher for you. Again, market year average price is the national cash price September to August for corn and soybeans. Again, for 2019, we're well within the year. And so that 385,877 is getting closer and closer to being known, but it can still vary from this point in time. And again, you're eligible for SCO. PLC has this escalator clause in it, which we mentioned because you always hear about it. It's not going to be effective in 2019 and 2020. Reference prices will be $370, $840, and 5 question. All right. $435 for corn, $988 for soybeans, $647 for wheat. If we're looking at the 85% of the 5-year Olympic average, for the effective reference price to be above those. Just to show you again, here are the prices that we've seen. We're looking at a market year average price for corn of $385. That's not going to vary across the nation for that matter. And again, we are not expecting a payment for 2019. For 2020, market year average price, effective reference price will be 370. 2020 market year average price, let's say if it's 385, we wouldn't get a payment. But look at here. In 2018, the market year average price was 361. That would generate a payment. 336, that would generate a payment. 336 for 2016, generate a payment. 361, generate a payment. Our estimates are going to put it at about 50-50 chance of making a payment for 2020. And there could be some pretty significant payments. Here's the calculations for soybeans. 840 is going to be your reference price. We have not seen a reference or market year average price below 840. So your question, if you take ARC County and next year, are you giving up anything for PLC? Well, your price has to be below 840.
But this is also a reminder of why ARC County makes sense on soybeans, because we are pulling in still $13 and $10 soybean prices. So they're keeping the benchmark price up higher, making that a more likely to trigger a payment.
Yep. So, and even if you get an $8 price, let's say doom and gloom, you get 40-cent payment rate. 50 bushels would be your payment yield, let's say, which would be high for a lot of cases. 50 times 40 is $20. 20 times 0.85 put it at $16 per base acre. So it just gives you sort of a benchmark. All right, wheat.
Wheat's easy.
Wheat's easy. Lean towards PLC. So again, coming back, if we lean to PLC or for corn, unless you're in a high ARC County payment, soybeans lean to ARC County, wheat lean to PLC. Other thing we're going to suggest you do is see if your FSA farm will make an ARC IC payment. And yes, we had this question, ARC IC. If you choose ARC IC for one FSA farm, the decision is applied to both corn and soybeans.
If you have base acres of those.
Yeah.
If you have both of those, if you have base of both those crops on the farm, on that FSA farm, then it applies.
Yep. Here's our ARC County PLC tools. We are currently updating that for county yields. It was not done this morning. We'll let you know, but we'll give it to Wednesday, and this will be up and running again with the new estimates based on the NASS county yields adjusted to represent FSA farms. All right. Now we're going to do a quick run through of ARC IC. All right, so again, we would suggest you download our spreadsheet, their 2018 Farm Bill What If tool. And if you enter the data, it will make the calculations for you of whether ARC IC will make a payment. Again, we don't know everything that we need to know to make an ARC IC payment calculation, but we know most of it. By this time, you should be close to knowing the 2019 yields. We know the 2013 through 2017 yields and prices. The only thing that we don't know yet are the market year average prices for 2019. So at this point in time, we can come pretty close to estimating whether ARC IC will make a payment. All right. This was designed. Excuse me?
On the ARC IC. So again, the key on this is something really drastic in 2019, like the prevent plant across that field is something that's going to pull that down.
Yep. And we're going
to get you to a zero actual revenue, which is really the push point on that.
Is ARC IC, it's a farm-by-farm choice. So if you have 4 FSA farms, you can enroll 1 in ARC IC, you can enroll 2 in ARC IC, and the remainder can go in ARC County PLC. If you enroll more than 1 farm in ARC IC, it's a blended benchmark revenue, or revenue calculation. it will not give you necessarily the same payment as if they're individually enrolled, and that's important. It combines all program crops. It's based on farm yields, and it pays on 65 versus 85. And it will pay the maximum payment, 10% of benchmark, if all, this is a key word, all acres in the FSA farm are prevent plant. It has to be all. The minute you plant an acre, it's based on the planted acres on that farm. So let me give you an example. You have a 100-acre FSA farm. 90 acres were prevent plant, 10 acres were planted to soybeans. It's the 10 acres of soybeans that matter. It doesn't matter that 90 acres were prevent plant. Just to give you a feel, this is the calculations. You will have to know the yields from 2013 through 2017. This happens to be a screenshot from our Farm Bill What If tool, our single ARC IC calculation. You will need to provide yields for each year in which the crop was planted. This one has 226 yield for 2013, 192 for 2015, 247 for 2017. We set this up so this was a FSA farm that had a total corn soybean rotations. There was no yields for 2014 and 2016 for corn. That happens to be soybeans. But they still use a yield for those yields, and it's the county yield. Our ARC IC tool brings those in. So if you did not plant a crop, it's the average county yield for that year that's used in making those calculations. They use those yields times a price, and the price is the higher the market year average price or the benchmark or the reference price, multiply it by revenue, and then take Olympic average of revenue. So that's this corn crops benchmark revenue for corn on this farm. Do the same calculation for soybeans. In my example here, 65 bushels were planted in 2014, 67 in 2016. Again, for the years in which the crop was not planted, it will use the county yield. This happens to be LaSalle County's county yields. Trend adjusted, by the way. Do the same calculations. They take that times either the higher the market year average price or the effective price. They're all above the effective reference price, and do a benchmark revenue calculations. All right, so what happens? What farm yields are used if you are a new tenant without the yield history? 38. So if it was planted, they're either going to use your yield or 80% of the T yield. So if you do not have a yield, it'll be 80% of the T yield that's used, which will generally be pretty low. So if you don't have a yield, it really, and if you can go back to the previous owner or farmer and get those yields, that would be great. Obviously, there's some concerns there, in that those might not be eligible. These calculations are not done at the tract level, they are done at the FSA farm level. So if you have a FSA farm that's split into tracts, doesn't matter, it's done at the farm level. So there's a corn benchmark calculation, soybean benchmark calculation. And now I'm going to give you 3 examples here. The first is that it's all prevent plant. We have 80 acres of corn prevent plant, 20 acres of soybean prevent plant, and there's no plantings. In this case, benchmark revenue is 80% of corn benchmark revenue, 20% of soybean benchmark revenue. It's based on what you planted that year. Guarantee is 86% of that. Farm revenue is 0. It's 0 because you have nothing planted. And you get the maximum ARC IC payment, which is 10% of that, and we adjust it by the 65% payment factor. If you have total prevent plant, you will be hitting 10% of the benchmark revenue times 0.65, and we often see those payments above $40 per acre in this state. So, all prevent plant. Example 2. So now the remaining examples are going to have acres planted. The minute we have planting, it doesn't matter. So even if we had 10 acres of soybeans planted, the prevent plant acres do not matter. If we had 10 soybean acres planted, it would be the revenue from the 10 soybean acres. I have in this example here 50 acres of corn, 50 acres of soybeans, but relatively low yields. 190 for corn, 55 for soybeans, and this triggers an ARC IC payment of $20.22. Again, if you think back, go back to 2013 through 2017, those were really good yielding years. 230, sort of the average for corn in much of northern and central Illinois. You get close to triggering a crop insurance payment here, you will probably also be triggering an ARC IC payment. Okay, that's one FSA farm. One final example, and the only thing that's going to differ from this next example is these yields are going to go up, and they did. And now 220 yield, 65 bushels gets 0 ARC IC payment. All right, so now consider taking in 2019 if there is a FSA farm with low yields, all prevent plant. One thing to do is remember that all FSA farms in a state in ARC IC are combined. So the minute you put 2, you're going to combine it. They're going to average the benchmark revenue before they calculate the benchmark payment. And it doesn't seem wise to put all FSA farms in ARC IC, and we were going to suggest you rank your FSA farms from highest to lowest payment and see how many farms to add. All right?
Yeah, this thing gets pretty complicated pretty quickly, so it's hard in a 1 hour, if not full day webinar to explain every situation you might run into here. But yeah, Gary's put that evaluation tool out there so you can look at multiple farms and how that changes things. But it does get pretty complicated in terms of combining all prevent plant versus some planted acres. So it's hard to give a blanket recommendation on ARC IC, other than if you do have full prevent plant farms. Those are ones you definitely want to consider.
Right, and even if you're ranking multiple farms, you're not. It's only where you get this low yield scenario or prevent plant. Like, you're really not having to run everything. It's just this sort of exceptional circumstance where the yields were really low, where you had all prevent plant. So it's not a entire set of farms that you're operating. You're just looking for those that stand out.
And again, it's hopefully a unique circumstance we're in, even having to consider ARC IC as much as we are this year, given what happened in 2019 with all the prevent plant acres we had. Moving forward, you'll most likely be shifting into one of the either PLC or the ARC County program moving forward.
Yep.
Pending we don't have another 2019 again.
Which is an interesting point, Nick. I don't think it's widespread, but I've got some farmers already wondering about 2020. They've got standing water already. Levees have broken in southern Illinois. They've got a lot of standing water. They're already starting to factor that into the ARC IC calculator or decision as well. Now it's too early to tell. Yeah. Hopefully weather cooperates to get planted, but that is a thought if you've got standing water already.
And it's also a reminder that you're making a 2-year decision. So
right.
If it does trigger for 19 but not for 20, you're stuck in ARC IC for those farms you put in there. So again, the more you're putting into that program, the more likely you've got to bank on 1 year for both. And
keep in mind that next year we're going to be making a decision about a year we don't know anything about yet. Again, right? We're 2019 is unique. We're making a decision about 2019 and 2020 with quite a bit of information about what happened in 2019.
So if you're combining farms, be careful. Adding a non-paying farm with a max ARC IC paying farm can increase payments, but adding too many non-paying farms can also eliminate payments. So you got to be really careful here, and we have ARC IC tool with multiple farms, and use the one dated after 2/21/20. So that's available for download now. We have had a number of enhancements and things added to it that so by all means, make sure you're using the one with this date or thereafter. But let's just give an example. This is the multi-farm tool. I'm going to do the LaSalle County farm case again. This farm has 100 base acres. Same thing as before. If this has all 80 acres prevent plant, 20 acres of all prevent plant, we get the maximum payment here of $53 per acre. And by the way, prevent plant, I put yields in here. They shouldn't have put those in here, but because this is prevent plant, revenue is 0. All right. Now, here's the prevent plant farm. Got the same farm here, but I have 220 bushels, 65 bushels. This is the farm 1. Farm 2, let's say it's the same farm, but we have 150 planted acres. This does not make a payment. So this is not making an ARC IC payment because benchmark revenue is above, farm revenue is above the guarantee. And we got the same situation here. So I got 3 farms here: prevent plant, good yields, no pay, and no payment for zero payment here. And currently only have 1 farm enrolled in ARC IC, and it's making a $53 payment over 100 base acres. All right. Let's add the second farm here. Good yields, no payment. What happens here is the benchmark revenue is averaged across those farms. Also, the guarantee is averaged across those farms. And 2019 revenue goes from 0 to 531. By the way, that 531 is an average based on acres of 0 farm revenue for 100 acres, 708, and it's 3/4 708, 1/4 0. That's where this 531 results from. You get a $48 payment, and your payment goes from $530 to $19,200 under ARC IC. Again, you're adding a non-paying farm, but because you're blending revenue, you get a higher payment. Now
Smaller payment per acre, but a payment on more acres.
A payment on more acres.
A lot more acres.
We go from 100 acres to 400 acres. Now let's do the third one. Yes, and we're adding the third farm. Our benchmark revenue is going up because we now have 600 acres of $708 per acre blended with 0. Goes down to 9, and you're reducing your ARC County payment. You can actually reduce this to 0 if the revenue is big enough. So, if you're combining farms and you got some of these with no payment, in some cases you can, because you're blending a 0 revenue with a one higher than that, you can increase payments by adding a no-paying farm. And then in some cases, by adding that no-paying farm or too much of the no-paying farms, you will actually reduce those payments down to 0. So, that is what you will see here. Just a note that is the case. And by the way, we had a question: if it's 220, that's a 220 date is a fine date for making these calculations. So that's the warning. Here to be summary. Be aware of deadlines. We're coming up to the March 15th deadline. You will want to make a choice, because if you do not make a choice, you will be
you default to PLC.
Default to PLC and no payments for 2019 as well. And our advice: look at ARC IC, not to sound like a broken record, but lean to PLC except where you have a high ARC County payment. Lean towards ARC County for soybeans, and lean to PLC for wheat. So that's what we have here. We also have these resources, so you can look at those resources available on our Farm Bill website. And we still have the SAO discussion here. Doug, You want to take that away?
I'll be more than glad to, Gary. As Gary mentioned earlier, SCO, Supplemental Coverage Option, is an additional crop insurance option PLC farms can consider. So it's only available for those farms that enroll in PLC. Now, with one caveat that may have led to some confusion in this past year. In 2019, since no farms were in either ARC or PLC, they opened the doors and let everybody consider purchasing SCO in 2019. And we did see a fair amount of SCO purchases in 2019. However, going forward, that rule does apply. Only PLC farms will be eligible to consider purchasing SCO. Now, even though it's tied to your ARC PLC choice with FSA, it's still a crop insurance product, so you would buy that from your crop insurance agent. Very similar to ARC County, it kicks in at 86% of either the county yield or revenue based on what you're buying. That 86%, of course, is the same trigger, same coverage level, so to speak, as ARC County. That's why they don't give you both. So since it's county-based, it's going to operate very similarly to the county-based crop insurance products. We used to call them GRIP. They're now called ARP, Ag Risk Protection. So if you're familiar with those products, this is going to be a very similar coverage, county-based coverage. It's available for corn, beans, and wheat in all counties in Illinois. Since it's going to operate similarly to those county-based crop insurance policies, of course it will use the same expected county yields those policies do, and the same February average corn and bean prices and October averages that crop insurance uses to set their base and harvest price guarantees. It will simply give you additional county-based coverage on top of what farm level coverage you're buying. By the way, you cannot purchase ARP and SCO both. You can only add SCO on top of your farm level coverage, such as YP, RP, or revenue protection with the harvest price exclusion. So if you're buying RP like the majority of Illinois farmers, which is revenue protection on the farm, your SCO would give you additional county level revenue coverage on top of your farm level revenue coverage. Again, as I mentioned, it kicks in at 86% of the county, goes down to your coverage level. So if you're buying 85% coverage level, for example, and the SCO kicks in at 86, you're only getting 1% additional coverage, obviously not a significant amount of extra coverage. However, of course, as you see lower coverage level use, for example, when we look at Southern Illinois, where 75 or 80% coverage levels are more common, then of course they would be able to purchase additional, more meaningful coverage with SCO. It kicks in at 86 and ends at wherever you purchase your farm level coverage. Now, Gary, I'm going to skip over this example. People can read through the example in their handout, but for the sake of time, I see we have a lot of questions still coming in. So I'm going to skip over this example, let people read that in their handout, and they can calculate, they can see how the calculations are used to distinguish how much county coverage you have. The upper and lower bands are illustrated there. It will calculate, this example shows the calculation to show your max payment, and then how to use that max payment to and the county shortfall to calculate your claim. This product can be fairly cheap for several reasons. One, it's county level coverage, not farm level, and it's highly subsidized. It's 65% of the premium is subsidized by the USDA. One important clarification as well, again, it's tied to ARC PLC choice. Those two farm bill options obviously provide you protection on your base acres. Even though SCO is tied to your ARC PLC choice, it's extra protection on what you plant that year since it is crop insurance. And one concern I have going forward, as I mentioned, in 2019, they gave us a free pass, so to speak. Since none of our farms were in ARC or PLC, they said everybody could purchase SCO, which means we had some farms purchase SCO in 2019. They can now go into FSA by March 16th, sign that same farm up for ARC County. Let's say, as an example, they're able to do that for 2019. That is the only year that free pass exists. Now that we're back in sign-up mode and they have to choose ARC or PLC on each FSA farm, for 2020 and beyond, that there is a penalty that does exist. If you tell FSA you want ARC County, tell your crop insurance agent you want SCO on the same farm, you don't get both. They will cancel SCO and you will be charged 60% of your SCO premium for no additional coverage. Now, again, this was a non-issue in the previous farm bill. That was a one-time choice, lasted for 5 years. You could not change your mind on ARC County or PLC. This farm bill obviously gives farmers a lot more flexibility. They can change from ARC County to PLC and vice versa from 1 year to the next. So So we're requesting all farmers to coordinate this with their crop insurance agent going forward. Nobody wants to charge you 60% of the premium for no additional coverage. And crop insurance agents are not notified in any way which farm program a farm is in. Obviously, a lot of crop insurance agents download a 578 from FSA for acreage reporting, but there is no indication on that form which program the farm is in. So please coordinate this with your agent so you're not in that, so you don't find yourself in that dilemma of having possibly both coverages apply and one of them being canceled and charging you for that. So Gary, with that, I'll turn it back over to you. I think we got quite a few questions here still on the screen.
But just to summarize here, I think the thing, if you're taking PLC, even 80-85%, think about SCO.
Absolutely. SCO is fairly inexpensive. And again, I mentioned Southern Illinois. Where we see the most of the interest in SCO is Southern Illinois. Reason they're only purchasing 75 or 80% coverage instead of 85 like we see in Northern Illinois, there's a threshold there. That extra 5% sometimes just doesn't make economic sense for them to purchase that extra coverage. So if they're only able to afford, let's say, 75% coverage, SCO is a much more affordable extra coverage they can get on top of that.
But again, you don't recommend buying down and
I do not.
Simply because you're trading off individual level
Exactly.
yield protection for
I think that's a great question, and I agree completely, Jonathan. Even though I did say we saw quite a few farmers purchase SCO last year, what I didn't see and what I really don't want to see is farmers reducing RP coverage so they can get more county coverage. If they liked county coverage, they'd be buying it. Last year, only about 5% of all policies sold were county-based policies. So obviously, farm level coverage is their preference. The minute they reduce their RP coverage, in your example, they're also reducing replant coverage and prevent plant coverage because SCO is county-based and it doesn't offer those. So please keep that in consideration before you, especially in this tough farm economy we're in, I would hate to see people reduce their farm level coverage for more county.
So we had a comment here, and we misspoke. Yes, if you don't sign up, your 2018 election will be what you decided last time, and it will just roll over. And again, you will want to go in and sign up because you will not be eligible for 2019 payments. And again, if you're in one of those counties, either way, if you have wheat base, or you're in one of those counties where soybeans are going to make a payment or likely to make a payment, you will want to sign up for something so that you get those payments. We had a question. ARC IC, yes, ARC IC is paid on 65% of base acres. The other two are 85%, and that's. Go ahead.
So Gary's estimates, the estimates we put out on FarmDoc, typically already incorporate that payment factor. So all the dollar amounts are per base acre typically in what we release. So they've already factored that in, that it's 85% of base for PLC in ARC County, 65% of base for ARC IC.
Yes, and we have this question here. Holding yield study, wouldn't the effective price for ARC County on soybeans to make a payment be $7.95? And that's and I'm going to assume that the math is right here.
Well, yeah, but effectively the question is holding the yield side constant. So just assuming benchmark yields.
Yep.
What price would you need to hit for ARC County to make a payment? I believe it's 86% of the benchmark price. I believe the benchmark price for beans is $9.36, isn't it?
Right.
So it's 80. It'd be 86% of $9.36 if your county had exactly the benchmark yield in 2019. But again, we know a little bit more than just naively assuming your county's going to have benchmark yield. There might be some counties that come in right at or near the benchmark, but we have a little bit more information on where those yields will be at using those NASS yields released last week.
So the question, we showed a $34 per acre estimate for ARC County for Grundy County, and that is, by the way, using NASS yields adjusted with our adjustment factor, which again is not official.
We're not guaranteeing $34.
It is if Gary Schnitkey was making this decision, it is how he would make the decision.
Yeah, that's right.
Which I trust.
You have the odds on that. Right?
Yeah,
that's not
all right.
a guaranteed payment.
So if a Grundy County payment on $34 presents a tough decision between ARC and PLC, would a payment of $13 for Iroquois County lean towards PLC?
So I think to put it as straight and simple as possible, 2019, we're not expecting PLC payments for corn.
Yep.
Very small chance of any PLC payment for corn. 2020, 50-50 chance of prices being below 370 and triggering a PLC payment. And based on what we've seen in the last 5 years, we could see corn in that 330 range. We've seen corn prices that low in the last 5 years. And, so that would be a 40-cent payment for PLC. Depending on your PLC yields, do the math, that could be a $30, $40 per acre payment for corn in 2020 on PLC. So that's kind of the decision. Do you want to take a $20, $30 ARC County payment in 19, which again is still not certain, or do you want to, have that price coverage in case we do see prices in that 330 or lower range in 2020? That's what we mean when we say the decision's a little bit tougher.
The expected value probably would push you towards taking PLC, but it's your decision.
Yeah, the chance that you're going to have lower prices next year really alters that. And for $13 in ARC County for 2019, it's tough, but it really does seem to lean more towards PLC.
We got a couple more questions, which we will answer, but we do really want to thank our sponsors, the Illinois Corn Growers Association, Illinois Farm Bureaus, and Country Financial. And here's where you can go. And we've got a couple more questions to answer here, and we'll answer those.
And the Excel document, the web tool, all of that can be accessed from this page. So everything we're showing, as well as previous videos, 5-minute farm doc videos, all kinds of all of our resources can be accessed through there.
So if you go to this website, FarmDoc, then go to our 2018 Farm Bill Toolbox, which is also linked on FarmDoc. You'll see our payment calculator, which will be up shortly, and this tool. If you download this tool, you can there's an ARC PLC tool, and there's the ARC IC tools. It will work on a Mac, by the way, so this spreadsheet will work on both Mac and PCs. ERS moved the forecast to season average price and price loss in February $6 to $9 for soybeans. I think it was $8.75, right?
Yeah, and it's not technically, it's not ERS. The USD estimate comes from the World Ag Outlook Board. That's in the WASDE report that comes out monthly. Next one will be out in the first week of March. But yeah, our information is that it's an $8.75 projected, and that's not a PLC program price. It's the price PLC uses, but the PLC payment rate is there's a reference price in PLC, but that's fixed at $8.40. That's not changing. But the price projection is $8.75.
So here's another question. I have one FSA farm number that has 100% prevent plant that I intend to put in ARC IC. When I use the what if tool and start adding farms that were partial prevent plant payment, it's showing that they would get payments also. All right, so and be sure you download a later version of the tool, but what is likely happening here, and again, we would have to see the specific case, is that zero prevent plant revenue on that one FSA farm is bleeding over to the other farms, causing the payments to go up.
Well, like Doug pointed out earlier, right? You might have a lower per base acre payment, but you're now spreading it across that example Gary showed earlier from the 100 to the 400. While you're lowering the payment per acre, you're spreading it now out over more acres, which could do so. But again, it's weighted, so you could lose it pretty quick too, right? That's part of the challenge of that is if it's a small field versus a very large field, you can start to lose that pretty quick.
All right, does FSA have base acres by irrigated or non-irrigated? And yes, the answer is yes, Jonathan.
Well, I mean, it depends on the county. You have to have a sufficient enough irrigated acreage in the county for them to calculate irrigated versus non-irrigated, and those are preset. Those are already in the tools and dealt with. So we know which counties they've informed us which counties have irrigated versus non-irrigated calculations. Yep. So if you're not in it, if you're not one of those counties, it shouldn't show up as that option.
So our example in these overheads show Henry County getting a $3 payment, but Henry doesn't show up in the slide. And I apologize for this, but what we were doing in that slide was lowering the yield low enough to trigger a payment, which wasn't the payment that was triggering on the yield was higher than that was estimated by NASS with the adjustment. Using your tool, LaSalle County shows a payment for both corn and soybean using yields a couple bushels higher than NASS yields. Again, we're making those adjustments, and I'll check LaSalle County for sure, but we entered those in here. I'm from Iroquois County. My question is about non-irrigated corn, and am I better off taking ARC or PLC with SCO? That's a good question.
Again, that was a $13 an acre estimate for our county, and you're in for 2019 and 20, and so it's really your best guess, I guess, of what you think prices will do in 2020. And I presume, Doug, on SCO, it's pretty high buy-up.
It was last year.
Typically, so you're not going to see a lot of SCO coverage?
I think, obviously, we'll see that go down this year because, obviously, any farm that takes ARC can't. So yeah. I wouldn't anticipate as many sales this year, but there's certainly interest in it again.
Our maps have estimated payments available for Minnesota. We haven't made those yet. We could see what
not maps, but the Minnesota can access the web-based calculator, and those counties in Minnesota will get estimated payments using that as well.
Yeah, and go to our February of last Friday, which would have been 21st, February 21st, FarmdocDaily, and you'll see a spreadsheet with all those listed.
Gary, do you mind if I take that one on units?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a question about how all of this impacts units on a farm number. I'm assuming that's meaning crop insurance units. Are they using basic or option or enterprise units? Now, the way that would factor into this farm bill decision is, in my opinion, twofold. ARC IC yields needed by FSA farm number, and if you update your farm yields for PLC, that you can also use farm level yields to do that. Obviously, from 2013 to 2017. Yes, you can use your crop insurance records for both of those cases. However, just keep in mind it's your actual yields. We don't get to use any of the crop insurance tools that improve your historic yields to give you better APH, such as trend adjustment, such as YE, YA, and yield cups and so forth. Has to be your actual yields, but you can use your crop insurance records. But oftentimes, for example, if your farmers are using enterprise units, those acreages on their unit structures don't match up with their FSA farm acreage. So they have a little work to do to make sure that the appropriate yield is used per FSA farm acreage.
We got a question here about pushing USDA to give us the higher of PLC or ARC County. Just to be clear on that, that is in the statute that Congress wrote in that you have to lock into one or the other for 19 or 20 before making the choice. So there's not that option at USDA, at least should they continue following the statute, to make that automatic hire one or the other. So that's just out of their hands. That was a congressional decision largely built around the estimated cost of a program that would pay the highest for any year.
So my ARC County payment for 2019 is estimated to be slightly larger than ARC IC for my farms. Would you lean to ARC County because of the greater chance of ARC County paying in 2020? I would. Again, we're making estimates of what things are going on here, but
plus you're getting that payment on 85%.
Yeah. When will FRMA yields be known?
Gary, my assumption is sometime in early June because they're allowing us to pay county-based crop policy claims June 16th. Those county policies also are using the RMA county yields now. So my assumption is they have to release RMA county yields sometime by early June.
But will FSA have
adjustment.
They're not going to exactly be the RMA
Right.
yields either, right?
Right.
FSA still needs to take that data, which they could have earlier than it's publicly available, but FSA will then make some adjustments even to the RMA records to get the final yields used for ARC County.
That's a good point. If I remember correctly, even when they were using the NASS County yields the last time for our county, which are published late February, early March, they still didn't release the FSA county yields that they were using till August or September, if I remember.
Yeah, and we don't know the price until the end of the marketing year, so it seemed like they just kind of waited to release all that information at the same time, usually early September, I think.
So we had a question, Iowa farms, what do we have for Iowa farms? If you go to our tools, they work for Iowa farms as well as actually any farm across the Midwest they will work for. The Gardner payment calculator works for Iowa farms. Our What If tool works for Iowa farms. So those are all available. All of these tools, by the way, are on the FarmDoc's website, FarmDoc. So you got to go to FarmDoc, which is directly linked to from FarmdocDaily. Once you're on FarmDoc, just hit the 2018 Farm Bill Toolbox. So we have a question. If you have the tool from 1/6/20, I would download it again because we've updated a number of things on that tool. So, do you expect ARC payments for beans in 2020? Probably not, but I would give it a 1/3 chance. So, do our payments on all our calculators take into consideration the 65 and 85% payment factors? So if you see a payment for ARC IC, it's per base acre, which takes into consideration the 65% factor. All ARC County and PLC payments are per base acre, which takes into consideration the 85%. Can you make the market year average price running average price available on FarmDoc? Yeah, we could. It's going to be $8.75 for soybeans, $3.75 for corn. And I don't know if we'll have any more information by the time you have to make the decision.
And just to clarify on this one question, again, if you sign up for ARC County, ARC Individual, ARC IC, if you sign up for that based on the Prevent Plan for 2019, you will remain enrolled in that program for 2020. So just keep that in mind. We've gotten multiple questions about that, and we want to be clear that you are in the decision you make by March 15th for both 2019 and 2020. And that is for all programs, ARC County, ARC IC, and PLC. And I think with that, we've gone over our time. We certainly appreciate everybody's tuning in. And
time to make the decision.
Go to the tools and get the best information out there that we have. So we appreciate it, and we appreciate our sponsors again for sponsoring this, and Doug for joining us once more.
My pleasure. Appreciate the opportunity to join this distinguished group.